Hey everybody. So I thought I would do like a follow-up video to the other narcissistic video that I made about spotting the early signs of narcissism in an individual. And like I said in that video, narcissism is like it's a pattern. It's not so much like a diagnosis like bipolar disorder. It's more of a set of qualities that characterize an individual's behavior, okay? So, narcissism runs on a spectrum, like I said before. And if you find that you are dealing with someone who is deep on the spectrum, you've seen it, been made aware of it, and now you want to get away from it, there's a couple of things to note. So, oftentimes when we're trying to move away from a situation, like we're actively participating in our own healing and growth, we tend to be reflective. And so we're like, well, how did I end up here to begin with, right? You kind of ask yourself these questions. And a lot of times the victims of narcissists, they tend to blame themselves. They're like, oh, if I had just been smarter, if I had just been better. That's not the case. There's only one real lesson when it comes to dealing with any individual who is toxic or abusive. And that's that you obviously were not loving yourself enough. I can promise you, individuals of this nature, they are going to walk right by someone that they know they can't plug into. Narcissists, and the way I describe them to my clients, they're like parasites. In order for their behavior to be sustained, they have to latch on to an individual who will play the game with them. The game is defensiveness and or validation. So it's that power struggle. It's chronic power struggle. Anyone who's going to play the game gives them their narcissistic supply, and they can feed on that. Now, someone who is in a state of loving themselves, respecting themselves, and having boundaries, they're going to look at this and be like, yeah, I'm not interested, bye-bye, okay? Right from the gate. And the second they see even signs of that behavior, they're just going to walk away. That's really the only way to save yourself from future scenarios, is to be so clear on who you are and knowing how to honor yourself, so that way you are not on their prey list. And again, narcissists aren't like, they don't scope out people because that person is special to them, and they don't pick their victims, in a sense where they're like, I want to beat up Paul, but not Sally. No, it's not like that. Narcissists subconsciously operate from a place of survival, and they're always going to look for someone who will give them what they need. So if you attract someone in there, it's a test of your boundary. At minimum, at most, it's a test of your own self-esteem or your own capacity to love yourself, okay? So they're going to try and find that weak point to get in and play the game. And if they can't, they'll move on. Because if you're not going to give them what they need, it's very survival oriented, they will move on to someone else. Now, individuals that they'll play the game with the most are the ones who are not only just giving them the narcissistic supply, but also become some sort of like threat. So typically what happens is there's like levels at which you get involved with that person. And so the closer, the more intimately involved you are with that person, the more of an obstacle you can actually be, ironically, to their end game. And that usually you'll find with like the malignant narcissists, like if they have a straight up agenda and you are a puppet to them, then it's a little bit messier. So you could actually be either like a pawn in their game, or you could be an obstacle in their game, all right? And that's where, like I said, it gets a lot messier. But once you've decided you want to pull away, you're not going to do this anymore, you're in a self-reflective moment, whether you're still involved with them or you've walked away, there's a lot of like, why me? Why did this happen? How did I attract it? And then there's this confusion loop that everyone goes through, right? So like I said, they're just predators looking for prey. You're not special. You just happen to realize that you weren't in a place of healthy self-love and boundaries. That's why you attracted them, period, okay? But the thing that a lot of people deal with, and I dealt with this with my ex years ago, and I remember just kind of looping, because you kind of go through this like, well, maybe if I had been enough. And then you're like, well, God, I'm so glad that I wasn't. And then you just go back and forth like a pendulum. And the thing is, your rational brain is trying to find a logical explanation for illogical behavior. And the sooner you can just kind of make peace with that, the faster you'll heal, because their behavior doesn't make sense from like a moral and ethical standpoint. You're like, I would never be mean to someone who was being kind to me. I just wouldn't do it, right? It's not natural, but it is for them. So there's this wrestling. It's like, excuse me, how come and how come and how come? And you play all these scenarios back in your mind, but I tried and I did, and I played the game and I showed up on time and I gave them what they wanted and blah, 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 blah. Why? Stop. I mean, I realize that there's a certain degree of like grieving that needs to happen, but at the same time, again, the more you can recognize that you're playing with this alien species and they don't operate from the same set of rules that you do, the faster you'll heal, because they don't. Their behavior is completely illogical and contrary to even like natural law. The thing that the way that I try to explain to people, if you've ever heard or talked about like, why doesn't their karma ever catch up with them? And like, why does this person's karma always catch up with them? The more, I guess, enlightened or evolved you are as an individual, the faster and the higher your vibration, which means that if you go against that lightness, you're gonna get hit faster, okay? Because you're more light and you're more at a high speed, therefore you're more prone to high speed comeback, okay? People who operate at this level, they're just living in darkness. They are existing in their shadow side and projecting everything. So for them to get that comeback, for them to get some sort of like, why isn't stuff catching up to them? How can they do all of this bad stuff and it just never catches up? It's because they don't live in lightness. They don't operate at a high frequency. So things might take lifetimes for them to catch up. Not your problem though. You just want to save yourself. You just want to get out, save yourself, your sanity, and move on. If you're in a position where there's like, it's convoluted, right? You have finances that are mixed up, or maybe you can't survive on your own financially, or you've got kids with this person and it's going to be messier. The pulling away is going to be messier, and you do have to be more strategic about how you do that. But the number one way to pull away from a power struggle is to stop engaging, whether you're in their presence or you just bail cold turkey. If you can afford to just bounce completely, this is the one time where I would give you the advice to actually ghost someone, because explaining yourself just engages the power struggle. And when we try to pull away from narcissists, it's very addictive, because we want that fight, man. We've gotten so used to defending ourselves and justifying why we're right, and look, here's the evidence. Like we've kind of gotten pulled into this game. And so the only way to really salvage your own sanity, preserve your own power, and actually ironically get them back, is to just withdraw completely. So if you can't do it physically because of some reason, do it at least psychologically and emotionally. And it's very challenging. Like I said, you're going to feel like you're trying to kick a heroin addiction, because there's some satisfaction in the fight, but you don't win in the fight. You win when you pull away and withdraw from the power struggle. So it's a matter of disengaging and allowing yourself to go through that withdrawal. It sounds completely counterintuitive to someone who's never done this, because your intuition is going to want to defend and fight and prove, and I'm right, and see, here's the evidence, and how dare you attack me. But actually it works in reverse when you want to save your sanity. And that's why, like in my book, I talk about being like water, because water is completely uncontrollable. Like you can try to pick it up with your hands and it falls through your hands. It cannot be manipulated. And so the only way to be non-manipulated is to literally be like water and stop reacting. And so if you can ghost them, if you can afford to be like, bye, I'm just not responding anymore, fabulous, because like narcissists love control more than anything. And if you just take away their bait, oh, they hate it. They absolutely hate it. But like, that's where you realize that by not engaging the power struggle, you're like, wow, okay, that feels good. That's my validation now, instead of engaging and trying to constantly defend yourself, okay? So more on this. It's hard for me to make an entire video on this. If you have questions or comments, feel free to message me, email me. I have a whole book that I put out, and I have a whole chapter on power struggles. I don't really get into narcissists specifically, because power struggles can happen at any level, but the math is the same. So if you liked this video, please share it, like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you've been in a narcissistic situation with someone where, you know, you just feel beat down, you know, this is what happens. Like, that's why I said the lesson is self-love, because eventually at some point you're empty. You have nothing left to give. You've realized that you have completely, you know, sacrificed yourself, which is the opposite of loving yourself. So anyway, I hope that was helpful, guys. And I'm still trying to get over a little bit of this cold I've had, but I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.